The sound started a week after I moved in. A frantic, rhythmic scratching coming from the wall behind my bed. Not the scuttling of a mouse or the settling of an old house. This was different. This was deliberate. Like nails scraping against drywall, over and over, always in the same panicked rhythm. A pattern. For quick scratches, a pause, then for more. It would only start after midnight. I tried everything, pounding on the wall, shining a flashlight, even stuffing my ears with cotton. Nothing worked. The scratching would just continue, a secret language of fear only I could hear. My new house was old, built in the 1920s, with crooked floors and a basement that felt like it belonged in a horror movie. In the darkest corner of that basement was a room. Not just a room, but a fortress. The door was a thick slab of oak, held shut with 3 heavy-duty padlocks, and the frame was reinforced with planks of wood nailed across it. It was like someone had tried to trap something inside, or maybe keep something out. The scratching from upstairs felt connected to this room. A primal instinct told me that whatever was making that sound was on the other side of this door. One night, unable to sleep, I went down to the basement with a crowbar. I felt like I was breaking into a tomb, and in a way, I was. As I pried the last board loose, the air grew cold, and the basement lights flickered. I held my breath and pushed the door open. The musty smell of decades-old dust filled the air, but what I saw inside wasn't a dungeon or a crawl space. It was a child's bedroom. A tiny, perfect room, preserved in time. A single bed with a faded quilt, a dusty rocking horse, and a small, handmade doll sitting on the floor. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but otherwise untouched. The scratching stopped. The house fell silent. I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my ears. I felt a sense of overwhelming sadness, not fear. I knelt down to look at the doll. It was a simple thing, with button eyes and a crudely stitched smile. I reached out to touch it, but as my fingers got close, a whisper filled the room. "He's coming back." I froze. The voice was soft, like dry leaves skittering on concrete. I looked around, but I was alone. Then I heard it again, a faint echo. "He's coming back for me." I stumbled backward, bumping into the rocking horse. That's when I saw her. A young girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing in the corner. She was translucent, her image flickering like a film projector in the dark. She wasn't terrifying, she was terrified. Her eyes were wide, and she was pointing a small, ghostly finger at the door. Not the one I came through, but the back wall. The one separating the room from the rest of the basement. Then the scratching started again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the wall behind my bed. It was coming from the other side of the wall the little girl was pointing at. And it was no longer a panicked scratching. It was slow, deliberate, a deep, bone-chilling scrape that sounded like something heavy and unholy was being dragged across the concrete on the other side. The little girl wasn't trapped inside the room. She was trapped with the room. The previous owner hadn't built this fortress to keep a ghost in. He had built it to keep the ghost safe. And now I had undone all his work. The scraping stopped directly on the other side of the wall. The silence was louder than any noise. Then a voice, deep and raspy, spoke through the wall. "You've been a very bad girl, haven't you, Sarah?" I stared at the ghostly girl, her eyes now filled with tears. She didn't make a sound. She didn't need to. I understood. The scratching was a warning, a message from a ghost trying to keep the living from making the same mistake she did. The man who had built this room wasn't the monster. The monster was the man who was coming for her. And he was just on the other side of the wall. The silence was broken by a single, deafening crack as the wood splintered. I looked at the little girl, and she looked at me. We were both trapped in her ghost-proof tomb, and the real monster was coming home.